A veteran Catholic exorcist faces his biggest evil, finding a centuries-old Vatican conspiracy that threatens to unleash hell on earth. In 1987, in Tropea, Italy, Father Gabriele Amorth, the chief exorcist of the Vatican at the time, was summoned to a town where a man was believed to be possessed by the devil. The local priest claimed that the man displayed typical signs of possession, like speaking in English, even though he had never spoken that language before. When Father Amorth arrived, the supposedly possessed man saw him and proudly declared himself to be Satan. This made Father Amorth suspicious of the whole possession claim, so he decided to simply sit down and talk with the individual. He asked the man claiming to be Satan what his name was and to describe hell, but the man avoided his questions by threatening to harm him. To test the man's powers, Amorth showed him a St. Benedict medal but saw no reaction in the man's eyes. He then taunted the man's abilities until he tricked him into possessing a pig to demonstrate his power. However, a villager shot the possessed pig dead. After the incident, Amorth was able to calm the man down. The devil is no longer present, and a few weeks later, Julia and her two children, Amy and Henry, arrive at an old Spanish abbey called San Sebastian Abbey in Castile, Spain. This abbey was inherited by Julia's late husband before his sudden death about a year ago. Amy is unhappy about moving to Spain, but Henry is not rebellious like her. However, he does not have any influence in this matter because he has not spoken since his father passed away. When they arrive at the abbey, Julia mentions that it is not too bad, but Amy sarcastically remarks that it is actually cozy. After that, the two children begin searching for their rooms while Julia is introduced to Father Escobel by the supervisor. The priest explains that he is actually waiting to personally greet the family and welcome them to the diocese. Julia expresses gratitude and reassures that they are being cautious in maintaining the abbey's original structure, taking into consideration both her husband's family name and the church. Soon after, while Amy is brushing her teeth, she hears a knocking sound. Initially, she ignores it, but when it persists, she asks her brother to stop and leave her room. Suddenly, there is another knock at the door, and Amy finally decides to knock back in response. Surprisingly, Henry is already moving around the house at the same time as the knocking. This makes Henry doubt if he was the one who knocked for the third time. As the story continues, the boy goes down to the basement and starts hearing eerie sounds. He then notices a hole in the wall and sees a seal that appears to be slowly breaking apart. Julia is upstairs and she's searching for Henry. She asks Amy for help, but Amy is still mad at her. Julia then tells Amy that they have no money left except for the abbey, which is their only property. However, she promises that once the reconstruction of the abbey is done, they will sell it and return to America. In the meantime, Julia asks Amy to assist her with her younger brother. In particular, when attempting to make him speak, Amorth encounters problems in Rome, Italy. He is facing consequences for something he did a month ago in Tropea. Cardinal Sullivan, who is in charge of the church tribunal, is unhappy with Amorth's actions because he did not have permission from his superior. At that moment, Amorth confesses that what he did in the past was not an exorcism because the man was not possessed but rather mentally ill. He believes that the majority of the people who ask for his help and claim to be possessed are actually mentally ill. Instead of performing exorcisms, he acts as a priest and talks to these individuals until they are mentally stable enough for him to suggest they seek help from specialists. Bishop Lumumba supports Amorth's claim, stating that 98% of the people he assisted were indeed mentally ill. Eventually, doctors and psychiatrists were recommended to these individuals. Sullivan then asks about the remaining 2%, and Amorth explains that those cases are the real deal, involving true evil that science will never be able to explain. Surprisingly, Sullivan smiles at this statement. Amorth notices this and tells the tribunal to stop beating around the bush, reminding them that he has experienced war and knows what a firing squad looks like. At this moment, Sullivan reveals that the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith has suggested that the role of chief exorcist should be officially vacated. He further explains that the church is always being pressured to stay important, and one method to achieve that is by abandoning old-fashioned beliefs like possession and exorcism. Upon hearing this, Amorth questions the purpose of the church if they themselves do not believe in the existence of evil. He then jokingly suggests that the congregation must want all of them to lose their jobs. Amorth is about to leave, but Sullivan says they still have unfinished business. He asks them honestly if this is about a deceased woman named Rosaria Valadez, whom he wrote about in a magazine. This surprises the tribunal. Sullivan, who is upset, tells him to calm down and show respect to his superior. In response, Amorth tells them that if they have a problem with him, they should go directly to his actual superior, the Pope. And just like that, Amorth walks away from the tribunal in frustration, leaving them with their foolish questions and ideas. The next day, back in Castile, two construction workers are in the basement discussing how eerie the place is. Soon after, one of them notices a hole and attempts to reach whatever is on the other side of the wall. After one construction worker fails to uncover something, the other worker uses a flare to investigate. Unfortunately, the flare causes a large fire that burns both workers, prompting the foreman to evacuate the team due to the dangerous conditions. At the same time, Henry begins convulsing, causing Amy to call for their mother. Henry only stops convulsing when Julia calls his name, and to everyone's surprise, he speaks for the first time in a year, ominously declaring that they will all die. At that moment, Henry aggressively scratches his face, which frightens Julia and Amy. They quickly brought him to the hospital. However, the doctor examines Henry and finds no issues based on the tests conducted. Julia, not surprisingly, finds it hard to believe given what she witnessed. In response, the doctor asks if Henry has experienced any recent traumatic events, and Julia informs them about his father. The doctor then asks how Henry has been behaving, and Julia mentions that he hasn't spoken since the incident until recently. The doctor observes that this could be a sign of psychosis. After the doctor quickly leaves, he only gives Julia sedatives to use in case Henry tries to harm himself again. Later that night, the power in the abbey is suddenly cut off, and Amy discovers that someone intentionally shut it down. Meanwhile, Henry aggressively grabs Julia's chest and demands to be breastfed. When she pushes him away, he lifts his shirt to reveal cuts on his body that spell out hate. To their horror, his voice changes as he commands them to bring him the priest. Julia calls Escabel because she wants him to see Henry. However, as soon as Escabel enters the room, he is forcefully thrown out by Henry, who is yelling that they brought the wrong priest. The following day, Amorth visits the Pope, who is rumored to be sick. However, the Pope denies it and sarcastically suggests that it's just what others wanted. He jokes, saying that they must have done their jobs well. People like Sullivan, who belong to a younger generation, no longer believe in the existence of evil. 200 angels were kicked out of heaven and sent to the earth, where God is not accepted. The author explains that this concept may be just an idea for younger people, but it is taken very seriously by older generations. At that moment, the Pope informs Amorth about a boy in Castile, Spain, who is believed to be possessed by a devil named Henry. Strangely, this news deeply troubles the Pope, so he asks Amorth to handle the case. The Pope is saying that something happened at San Sebastian Abbey, a place that has caused many troubles for the church in the past. He believes there is a strong presence of evil there, and only Amorth can handle it. Amorth looks into the files about Henry and the Abbey and reads a message that says our sins will catch up to us. After that, Father Amorth immediately goes to Spain. He went to meet Henry and his family, but when he arrived at the Abbey, he noticed a well in the garden. Soon after, a man named Escabel approached him. Escabel mentioned that he had read all of the articles that the man had written. The man, Amorth, then said that Escabel should also read his books because they are good. Escabel then introduced Amorth to Julia and Amy. Right now, Julia is wondering why the church is sending priests and why they are interested in her son's case. Amorth explains that he is just here to check on Henry and suggest ways to help him, but the final decision is still up to her. Amy agrees that it's worth a try, so Julia tells the priest where Henry is. When Amorth sees Henry in person for the first time, he finds him sleeping and starts praying. Henry wakes up and tells Amorth that prayers are useless in this place. Amorth quietly reveals the San Sebastian medal to Henry and notices that Henry's eyes resemble those of the devil. Amorth then asks the devil for its name and why it has possession of Henry. The devil replies that it is Amorth's worst fear and enjoys causing harm to innocent children. Surprisingly, the devil also expresses a desire to challenge Amorth as an exorcist and claims that it is here specifically for him. The devil mentions that is aware of Amorth's nightmares and sins when his name is spoken. In a flashback, Amorth was involved in a war against the Germans as a member of a partisan group. During an ambush, Henry vomits a bird that Amorth recognizes. Amorth informs Escabel, who is outside the room, that they are dealing with a formidable devil. Amorth believes that the devil's knowledge determines its ranking in their hierarchy. He then tells Julia that her son is being influenced by a very strong devil, so if they take him out of the Abbey, Henry's life will be at risk. Amorth suggests that Henry might have experienced some traumatic event, which can make him vulnerable to the devil. It is later revealed that when Julia's husband died in a car accident, their son Henry was with him and witnessed his father getting impaled. During this time, Amorth advises Julia to hold onto her faith, as a mother's love is similar to God's love. Meanwhile, Amy hears the knocking sound again and goes to see how Henry is doing. To her shock, Henry eerily tells her that he is in hell, causing her to hastily return to her room. Suddenly, the phone starts ringing, and things get even more frightening when she hears her father say that everyone is going to die. Feeling scared, Amy quickly goes to her mom and tells her about her dad's message. After hearing this, Amorth suggests that they take a break while he and Escabel deal with the devil. Eventually, Amorth tells Escabel that Henry won't be able to survive much longer with the devil. In his body, there is a demon that needs to be identified so it can be expelled. Before entering the room, Escabel confesses his sins to Amorth, mentioning that it has been 8 months since his last confession. The two priests then enter the room to make the demon reveal its name. While they are praying, the power unexpectedly goes out and Amorth sees Rosaria in front of him, warning him that his sins will come back to haunt him. Amorth admits that he believes his sins have already been forgiven by God, but Rosaria disagrees and says that he is the one who can't forgive himself. Then the devil taunts Escobel about his secret relationship with Octadella. This makes Escobel angry and he attacks Henry. However, Amorth intervenes and explains that this is exactly what the devil wants. Before the priests move in, the devil tells Amorth that he fell for a trap and that the Holy Church will fall apart from within. Meanwhile, Escobel confesses to Amorth that Adela was the love of his life, but she wanted him to choose her over being a priest, which he couldn't do. He lied to her because his love for God was stronger than his love for Adela. Amorth blesses him and reassures him that God will forgive him. Escobel asks about Rosaria, and Amorth responds by saying that she is the girl he should have helped earlier. Amorth believes that the devil inside Henry is powerful enough to sense their guilt and use it as a way to distract them. At this moment, Amorth recalls the devil's words about him falling into the trap. At that moment, he suddenly understands that the devil has a bigger plan than it initially. Because of this realization, he tells Escobel to stay outside Henry's room while he goes to inspect the well in the garden. When he reaches the well, Amorth is surprised to see the Vatican seal on the lid. He opens it and finds that the well is constructed with multiple dead bodies, gas storage, and another seal at the bottom. Meanwhile, inside the abbey, Julia and Amy are both attacked by a devil. When Amorth returns, he finds Escobel bleeding from being bitten by Henry. They hear the women screaming loudly, so Amorth helps Julia while Escobel saves Amy. Afterwards, they bring the ladies to the chapel to rest comfortably. Soon, Amorth takes Escobel back to the well to show him something he found. To his surprise, they discover the seal there. The Spanish Inquisition was a very dark period in church history. It was discovered that the bodies found in the well were those of people who refused to convert. Amorth believes that there may be more bodies hidden beneath them, so they decide to explore the basement. In the basement, they find a hole in the wall where another Vatican seal, the same one Henry had seen earlier, is embedded. The two priests forcefully open something, and it takes them to an underground burial chamber. Inside, they find the dead body of the previous cardinal protector locked in a cage. Amorth, one of the priests, explains that the cage is not a prison but is actually keeping the devil, whom he was trying to exorcise, away from the body. They continue exploring, and Amorth looks for a key on the corpse. Eventually, they unlock a gate that leads to a room that looks like a throne room. Meanwhile, the Pope finally understands the type of devil Amorth is facing. He had difficulty breathing and had to go to the hospital. At the same time, Julia woke up and realized that Amy was gone. Expecting the worst, she took sedatives and went to Henry's room, where she found out that Amy was also being controlled by the devil. When they returned to the two priests, they found another dead body, and Amorth identified him as Friar de Ojeda. One of the most well-known exorcists in history, Amorth opens his journal, which is marked with the seal of the Spanish Inquisition. He and his companion, Escobel, find out that after they failed to remove a powerful devil from Segovia, it took control of the exorcist's body. The possessed exorcist then carried out all the terrible acts that occurred during the Inquisition in the name of God. The church tried to hide and suppress the truth about something. The devil warned them that the truth would eventually come out. They discovered a world map with certain places marked in red. Referring to a passage in the Bible, Amorth realizes that San Sebastian Abbey is one of the 200 places on earth where God is not accepted. Eventually, they uncover the name of the devil who has possessed Henry, which is Asmodeus, the ruler of hell. Escobel recalls that in the past, the devil was seeking a specific priest, who happened to be Amorth. Because of this, they suspect that Asmodeus wants to repeat history by possessing another exorcist in order to undermine the Vatican and create chaos in the world. However, since they now know the devil's name, they are ready to perform a final exorcism on Henry to remove Asmodeus from him. Before his death, Amorth desires to confess his deepest regret. In 1942, during an ambush, everyone in his unit perished except for him. This left a young Amorth questioning why he was the only one spared by God. Eventually, he came to understand that his purpose was to serve God and his people. However, when it truly mattered, Amorth was unable to fulfill his duty. One day, Amorth was contacted by Rosaria's family because she claimed she was possessed. However, Amorth realized that she was actually suffering from mental illness, not possession. Due to his pride as an exorcist, he refused to help her because he believed it was not his job as a psychologist. This decision ultimately led to a tragic outcome when Rosaria took her own life, blaming Amorth for not believing her. At this moment, Escobel offers comfort and asks for God's forgiveness for him. This gives Amorth and Escobel the courage to confront Asmodeus. They also request Julia and Amy's assistance, urging them to continue praying for Henry. However, Asmodeus proves to be incredibly strong, and it becomes evident to Rosaria and Adela, the two women priests, that they have not succeeded in their mission. However, they manage to overcome the obstacle and resume their efforts to exorcise the King of Hell. Suddenly, the devil unexpectedly stops fighting, as if Henry is already dying. To their shock, Asmodeus ends up fully possessing Amy as well. Amy then attacks Julia while Henry regains his strength and suspends Escabel in the air. Realizing that the only way to save everyone is to make a sacrifice, Amorth finally offers himself to Asmodeus in exchange for their safety. The King of Hell willingly accepts the offer and releases the children who are possessed by him. At the same time, the Pope wakes up and senses that something has happened to Amorth. Additionally, the devil reveals himself to Sullivan by causing a statue of Christ to bleed in the church. Eventually, only a few of Amorth's instructions remain, and Escabel is told to evacuate the family from the abbey. Then he attempts to remove himself from the situation, but the devil prevents him. The devil then takes him to the throne room, where he witnesses Holy Mother Mary transforming into Rosaria. Meanwhile, Escabel decides to return for Amorth and discovers him seated on the throne. He calls out to him, but Asmodeus mocks him, claiming that Amorth is no longer present. Escabel strongly believes in God and Amorth, so he begins to perform an exorcism to remove Asmodeus from the priest. As Amorth starts to recover, they pray together until Asmodeus leaves the priest's body. However, Asmodeus then appears in Rosaria and Adela, so the two priests must fight to bring peace. In the end, through their strong faith, Amorth and Escabel are able to defeat Asmodeus. The following day, Amorth and Escabel visit the Vatican. The Pope greets them warmly and praises them for their successful work. He then asks Amorth to provide a detailed report of what occurred in Spain, as the congregation is interested. Amorth expresses doubt, believing that Sullivan will dismiss it as his imagination. However, the Pope assures Amorth that Sullivan is taking a break in Guam, so he doesn't need to be concerned about the congregation's reaction. Furthermore, Bishop Lumumba joins the group and is expected to fully support Amorth. The movie concludes with Lumumba leading them to a secret church archive where they have been researching and discovering 199 other locations where God is not accepted. Amorth and Escabel are tasked with performing exorcisms in these places. The Pope's Exorcist effectively combines traditional exorcism elements with significant historical events like the Spanish Inquisition. What are your thoughts on this film? Guys, tell me in the comments section below. Furthermore, if you enjoy my videos, please subscribe and like them. See you soon in the next video. Take care and bye now.